making final preparations here for the live broadcast. So I'll be on here in a few moments, setting things up finally. Video looks good. Sound looks good. All set up. Hi, this is Everett from Everetts Watercolors. Just doing some final little checkouts here before we get started. I just sent out a little text message on the chat room, so if you're listening in, take a look on the chat room and give me some questions if you have a question, and we'll continue. I'll repeat that again. Hi, this is Everett's Watercolors. Welcome to my classroom. And I'm back again. This is my number 3 broadcast that I've done. Last week, I went over a very short period where I showed the last planning steps of the painting that I'm working on. And my construction is the roof has been repaired and everything is in good shape. So we're back in operation. So today, what I want to do is I want to continue on with. I'm going to get the painting done today. Show you how I always did it, and I got a lot of pointers to show you. And I think you're really going to enjoy this presentation. So let me go on over to my painting table and let me get started. Okay, for some of you that haven't seen this before, the previous broadcast, this is the photograph of a magazine I used as a reference. And it's a landscape. And I really like the pattern. I like the pattern of the particular shapes and so forth of the landscape. And really, the purpose of this, I gave the why in my last broadcast. The purpose of this painting, and I have a good why for why am I painting it. And that was one of my tips for last week, is that this is a good training exercise to teach. And I can teach you a lot of things about landscapes. I can teach you about values and how to put the paint down, and also brush strokes and some other techniques that I'm going to show. So that's the purpose of the painting today. Let me go over, I did before I start. This is the close-up camera. I also did a drawing and from the actual picture of the magazine. And the drawing lays out my design and also shows the values that I'm going to use, the dark areas and the light areas, which is very important. And I added a figure here also in the painting, and it's a bicycle rider overlooking the scene. And that's the name of this painting is going to be Bike Rider's View. So it's a little landscape scene, and this is I'm actually purpose of this is I'm actually going to paint from my drawing. So it's very important that you do a good sketch and plan out your design before you get started. Okay, let me put this aside. And then the next thing I showed was I transferred the drawing over to a quarter sheet of Gemini watercolor paper, and it measures 15 inches by 11 inches wide. Okay, and I transferred the drawing. I'll give you a close-up because it's a light drawing, but you can see the design on there in pencil. Okay, so now first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to start. Let's go to my palette. I wanted to tell you a little bit about. Now I'm going to tell you the tip for today is I'm going to use a fairly limited palette, but also I'm going to concentrate on the unity factor of a cool dominant painting. And you can see here the cool dominant with the blue. I've got the cobalt blue here in my palette. I've got ultramarine blue, and I have peacock blue. These are the three blues I'm going to introduce in the painting. Also a cool color, I've got Hooker's green down here at the bottom. To the right, it's the darkest green. Then I have green number 2, which is a middle value green. And then I have green number 1, which is a light value. Now, the only warm colors I have in the painting will be yellow ochre and a little bit of burnt sienna. Now, I'm going to have a touch of alizarin crimson when I do the sky, just a touch. So the tip for today is once you get your painting and also during your planning, you want to think about what kind of colors you're going to use, and you either want to make your painting warm dominant or cool dominant. That gives you unity in the painting. So the tip for today is to have unity. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the sky. Now I'm going to do this a little bit differently. I'm going to do it a little bit unorthodox. So I'm going to use a little, I made up a little piece of scrap watercolor paper, and I'm going to cover the bottom portion of the painting. And also want to protect the rest of it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce just plain water. There it is. This is a palette in a bottle, fine mist sprayer with a black top. This has got plain water in it. Okay, this is one of my premium sold exclusively by Everetts Watercolors. It is a palette in a bottle, and it's found on my website, www.everettswatercolors.com. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is with a light mister, with a fine mister, I'm going to just wet the top of this paper with a little bit of water. And that'll help the paint flow. Then I'm going to pick up a fine mister with cobalt blue in it. And the fine mister, I'm going to start over here at the right. Now I hold the fine mister with a color, and I hold it back about 8 to 10 inches away. A little bit darker on the right. Okay. Now we'll take all these scales off here. Protect the rest of the painting. Now what I'm going to do, I'm not going to leave that alone. I'm going to take this old bristle brush, which is just a very cheap painter brush, but I'm going to take that and I'm going to drag it across the cover. That's going to smooth out the paint on top of that, just like that. Okay, I'm going to let that dry. All right, that's the sky. Now I'm going to have to let that dry a little bit before I start on with the further down. But what I think I'll do, and also wipe off the excess moisture on the sides. If you don't keep the moisture off the sides, what it'll do, it'll go back into the painting and it'll cause blossoms, or mushrooms they call them. So keep the edge of the painting dry, keep the edge of the painting clean without excess moisture. You know, because there's a lot of water, I'm going to also look at where the water's going. I want the top of the sky to be a little bit darker, so I'm tilting the paper just a little bit to get the paint to run up. I'm going to get this towel away. I put the towel down. When I'm spraying, I don't want to get the water everywhere, so it's always a good idea to cover up other areas around your painting area so that they don't get wet. Okay, I have a nice gradation. Now this is over here is a little bit darker, over is a little lighter. I'm going to have the source of the light with the sun coming from the top onto the landscape. So that's why I left this a little bit lighter over here. The source of light is over here, from the top left across the painting. Now while I'm letting that dry a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and mix up the next color. Now what I'm mixing up now, I'm using a little bit of cobalt blue with just a touch of erythrum crimson, just a touch. And I'm going to have a also, what I always do is always have a test sheet of paper, a little extra sheet of extra piece of watercolor paper to test the color out. A little bit darker, just a little bit darker. Okay. That looks good. That looks good. Okay. More red in there. It's still a little bit wet. So this is the only part I'm going to have to wait for it to dry just a little bit. But what I'm doing now is I prepare the paint mixture, and that's going to be the low-lying hills or low-lying mountains way off in the background. And I'm going to make them into a wet on wet, which will give me a soft edge also. So I'm waiting for it to get a little bit drier before I put any more in there. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and put some more uh, areas down. I'm going to take a little bit of ultramarine blue. I'm going to change brushes now. This was a flat brush. I'm going to change this to this is a large mop brush, natural hair, but it's also something I can use here to really spread the paint. A little bit of yellow ochre. Now the ultramarine blue and the yellow ochre mix it into a green, a dark green. And I'm going to put a little bit of hooker's green in there, just to add a little more green to it. A little bit of hooker's green. So I want that to be a dark or darker gray, darker green. And I'll test that out. That's about right. And I'm going to go ahead and put in these low-lying hills here. These have trees. Now the trees are there. Of course, there's trees on the mountain too, but you won't be able to see those. These are trees that are popped up. This row here is going to be the furthest one back, or at least definition. The further back in the landscape you are, the least amount of definition you're going to have. What I'm going to do is take a smaller brush, and I'm going to start putting in a little bit of color in there, a little bit of brown, putting a little bit of burnt sienna. The season I'm going to have here is it's starting to be early fall, so we're going to have a little bit of the foliage is going to be turning a little bit brown. So I'll put a little bit of brown back in that green just to give a little change in color. I'm watching the sky up there as I want to put the that wash in up there right above just above the horizon area. Let's see. I'll keep looking at it. I think I'm going to try it. So I've got this color mixed. And I'm going to go ahead and put this into that wet sky. I'm being extra careful here because I got two wet washes here, one in the sky and one below on the trees. So I don't want the paint to run in both ways. And I can overlap this other little hill. There's another hill here in front, which I'm going to put a little bit of cover on top of that. Okay, I'm going to leave that white. I'm going to leave that white paper, that little gap, until this other part dries. Okay, I'll leave that alone. Now I'm going to pick up a little lighter mix of green. I'm going to use green number 1. I'm going to mix that with a little bit of burnt sienna. It'll dull it down just a little bit. And a little bit of yellow ochre. Okay, so this row of trees here is going to be a little bit warmer, a little bit lighter to show that it's coming forward. So really what I'm doing now, I'm blocking in these areas with color. So I'm going to go back and actually add more paint on top of this. But right now, just getting the base coat down. Yeah. Right here, check on my other plan for fields. Okay. Now the other warm areas that I have are these fields. I have some weird fields here. I'm going to pick up another brush. Let's see, I'll use a flat brush. This is a half-inch flat brush from Holbein. Now synthetic brush, and I'm going to put in this little bit of yellow ochre here. This is now the paint. The picture didn't have this in there, but this is something I added to make a little more interest. I put a little bit of field out here. I'm going to put some vegetables in. be a little more interesting. So as an artist, you know, you can take something, take a photograph or a scene, and then you can make it your own by interpreting it your way and adding different things that you want to. Here in this case, I'm adding some farmland behind this little building here. So these are going to be cultivated fields here with some vegetables in them. I'm blocking those in. Those are probably the warmest colors in the whole painting. There's also I'm going to put a little patch over here. And my whole idea here is that this will be a cool dominant painting, but I'm also putting a little bit of warm around the impact area. It's going to be warm. So, and that's about the only place I'm going to have any warm. The rest is all going to be cool. So cool color dominant with a little white with a little bit of warm contrast. And the contrast is to give the painting a little interest, a little more interest. Okay. Let's see. Field, foreground grass. Yeah. Now I have another little scene, another little what I call a little. You know, put this over top of this. And I'm going to. This is just a shield just to keep the paint from getting on other parts of the paint. I'm going to use another spray bottle. This is I'm using yellow lemon. This is the foreground grass. So I'm just putting a little light application of yellow lemon. And on top of that, I'm going to put a little bit of green number 1. These are the palette in the bottle dot sprayers, the ones with the bright tops. And here I'm going to add a little bit of green here, just to mix in a little bit of green with that yellow. Okay, that's enough. Okay. So that I used a fine mist sprayer for that particular ground. And I'm going to continue the rest. And I can paint over some of this because I'm going to come back with darker colors over this. So I can put other colors on top of this color here. Okay. There's a little patch of green grass around my little house here. So I'm going to put that in. Let's see. Let me test my colors. I want to make it a light green. A little grassy knoll here that the house is on. I'm going to put that around this little grass up here, around this little farmhouse. So I'm putting my my warmer colors, my brighter colors, around the impact area. And this area up in here is really my impact area or area of interest, center of interest. It's got all kinds of terms, but really it's the area where I want your eye to go to in the painting, and everything else will support it. So I have cool dominant colors in the sky, most cool colors on the ground, but I got warm colors here in the fields and down in this forward grass around the impact area. Everything else is going to be cool. I got one more green. I got one more green mix here. Number one and peacock. So I'm going to use the peacock blue. The peacock blue is a cool color. I'm going to mix in the green number one in with the peacock blue. Give me another green, a darker, a bluish green, but it's going to have a cooler look to it. And that's going to be these trees up here. It's got a bluish, you got a greenish tint to it already. The peacock blue is another beautiful color. And peacock blue is another one. It's up here around the impact area, so I'm really, it helps also show off special colors around the impact area. So I'm going to put that up here. This is a little more green. These are tall trees up here, and this is the middle ground. This middle ground area. Again, I'm blocking in the colors. I'm just getting the colors in there, and I'll go back in later and make some little minor adjustments to them. But right now, I'm just blocking in the colors. There's some fence posts here, which I'm painting around just a little bit because I don't want to paint green over top of those, not at this point. So I'm painting a little bit around. So this mop brush holds lots of paint, but it also comes to a nice fine point. So I can do a lot of detail with the end of the brush. So these are little low-lying bushes here over the hill. This is a hill that's going down into the valley. The valley there is where the little farm is, where the little fields are, down into the valley. And then you got the mountains in the background. So it's a very peaceful little scene. And this came out of a book from the Blue Ridge Mountains. So it's a typical view from the mountain range in the Blue Ridge Mountains, overlooking the valleys. And I'm trying to, this color here, I'm trying to make this come forward because it's a little bit different than the other colors. It's a little bit stronger at this point because it's closer. As things get closer to the viewpoint we have here, the colors get a little stronger, a little more vibrant. And as you go further back into the landscape, they get a little more less defined and not as much detail, not as vibrant. So that's really this again. This is as I say, I think this is a good painting to have as a training painting to show and teaching painting to show different ways of doing things. Here I got three different kinds of greens so far. Greens are very hard to manage sometimes, but by putting down a base coat and then go back and put in extra colors on top of them. For example, here I can put in a little bit of yellow ochre here on top of this group of trees here in the middle ground. Remember, I said early fall, so we're going to have some trees turning brown. Some of the leaves are turning brown. They've still got a lot of greens on them, but we're getting a little bit brown around the edges. just an indication. It's just impression of that particular sort of season. I think what I'll do is just take some of that lighter green and go over here. There's some bushes around this area. I'll go around on this side. Again, I'm just I'm painting around these fence posts because I want those to go in as a separate color. So different brush strokes. This one here is I'm using the same technique here with this mop brush. Put a little bush around this. Maybe a little building over here too. A little building. Okay. Sort of big round. Yeah. Some grass. Okay. Now I've got some darker greens here again. So I'm going to take this Hooker's green and mix in a little bit of ultramarine blue with that Hooker's. That'll give me a real dark green. And that's going to be there's some little grass growing along the road here. So I've got the opportunity here to put in some darker color. So the foreground here is going to go into darker area. A little shadow pattern from the right. Mixing a little bit of burnt sienna, a little bit of yellow ochre into this green, just to give it a change, a little bit of change. I'll go over top of this area here. Okay, now here's a little technique that's the wet paint and with a brush. This is a synthetic brush. It's a flat brush, and by pushing down the bristles and just letting it come up, I can get the look of grass. I don't want to do that everywhere, but I can get it started here. And then in other places, I can just give it a normal stroke using the end of the brush. But down here, I can go ahead and use some of that stroke, get some taller grass growing up here from the road. So what I'm doing is taking the brush, bending it, and letting it flop out, creating that upward motion to simulate tall grass here along the edge of the road. I think what I can do here, take some of that look and bring it on down. There's a field back here that's got in the background a little bit. Okay. Okay. All right. I'm going to try to get those fence posts in. So what I'm going to do is take a round brush. No, I think I'll use a flat brush. Flat brush gives me a straighter line. Using a flat brush, using the right kind of brush for the job is also important. So I'm going to take a little bit of burnt sienna, get started here. Now I'm going to go in and put these fence posts in. So I'm going to start with a little burnt sienna here. Then I'll pick up a little bit of ultramarine to give it a darker. Otherwise, it won't be the same. It won't be the same color. It'll be a little darker here because the light's coming from the left to the right. So the back, this edge will be a little bit in shadow by putting a little bit of putting a little bit of ultramarine blue there. Will give it a shadow pattern in the back. So going back to the fence post with the brown, the burnt sienna, with a little bit of ultramarine on the shadow side. That gives it a darker look on the back side. And then burnt sienna on one end on the warm side. And on the shadow side, we put the ultramarine blue to give it a shadow effect. Give it a darker brown. Push it down into the grass. I think what I can do here is I see some of this. I'm going to take a regular tissue, pick up some of the excess moisture here, and that'll give a little bit of indication back here in the background. Some lighter and darker areas. That's okay. Even up here in the foreground, I can pick up some color. Give me a little variation of that green instead of a flat look. I'm going to go back with some more paint on top of that, but instead of a flat look, I'll get more of a softer and variable look by picking up a little bit of the paint. Even down here in this real dark area here, pick up some of that color. Make it dry a little faster. Okay. And this little part over here, picking up some of the excess moisture. Okay. Now the roadway, I'm going to take a big brush. This is the 3/4 inch flat from Holbein, synthetic. It's a nice painting brush. And I'm going to mix up a little ultramarine, a little bit of alizarin crimson, maybe a little bit of burnt sienna. Make up a dark gray or even a little blue into it. But that's or brown. That's going to be the color of the roadway. So I'm going to bring that in here. Putting a little bit of blue into it. This is ultramarine blue mixed in with that burnt sienna. Just a little bit of alizarin crimson. Yeah, nice dark color. I want it to go from dark to light value. direction of the brush strokes give it the indication there's a curve coming out, a curved road coming around the slope of the hill here. Now I've got to finish up some more fence posts. So I'll go back to the burnt sienna and put in some more fence posts. This gives a little character to the landscape, a little bit of okay. Now I think I'll work on the house a little bit, and I'm going to finish up the I got a couple of things I got to clean up here. Let's see. I've got so I gotta wash, clean up my palette just a little bit. Take a sponge and just wipe out a space here. Wash out the brush. Make sure I have a clean brush. Wipe it out with a towel, tissue, and take some of that cobalt blue with just a touch of Listerine crimson, just a touch. Oh, it didn't take much for that, does it? Listerine crimson is really, really strong. I want more blue than red, but I want to have that little touch of red in it just to give it a little warmth. Just a touch. Let's see. Now I want to match the colors that I had before. Okay. I'm going to go back in here and fill in this area. Re-wet that dried edge, and then bring it together into the tree line. We'll just take this, wet it up a little bit. And take a little darker paint, just come right across those trees. And across these trees over here. Making that mountain in the background a little bit darker. A touch. Add a little more pigment to this area that was white. There's a white spot in here. I'm trying to move that paint around just a little bit more to integrate that color with the other color was there. And continue on. Let's go back. I'm going to put a little bit of black. I'm going to put a black roof on this house here. Painting like this takes a while because I have a couple drying parts here, and normally I would do this in phases and let that paint dry, then go back in and do another layer on top. But I want to keep the painting moving long enough to show the different parts. So I'm skipping around different sections. But here I'm building the detail here on the little farmhouse because as a point of interest, and there's a little bit of shadow under the eave here. That'll define that. There's a little shadow under this eave. over here. Yeah. I've also got, it's not a good idea to have just one building in. So I put a little small building under here on this section, just another structure. It could be a small house. It could be a storage shed or whatever it is, but it's another architectural piece in the painting. So it's not, you don't have just one building stranded by itself. We have two. Okay. Now I think what I'll do now is put in some detail on those fields. So I'm going to start building up the fields now. So I'm going to take a little bit of green. Let's see, our green number 2 is fine. Mixed in with a little bit of blue. Give me a little darker green. And I'm going to make these fields. They're vegetables. We don't know what they are. They're just. Now these are, I'm making them so they're in perspective. As you get further away from the background, I'm coming forward, they get a little bit wider as far as spacing. So I'm using a little bit of perspective here to simulate depth. Just getting the beginning shapes there. We'll probably widen these just a little bit more. When you see this video, if there's any questions you have or comments, put them in the comment section. Put them in the comment section, and I'll get back to you. I'll get back to you when I see your comments. So right now, I'm going to go ahead and finish it. I'm going to put a little detail now. I've gone pretty far demonstrating a dominant, cool landscape color, a dominant color scheme. And I've shown very different ways of how to put the paint on. I used spray bottles. I used brushes. There's other things I can show you. So that's a field of vegetables. And then back here, further away, so we use a lighter green. There's another field that's got some rows in it. So this will go this way. So this gives you a pattern. It gives you a little. I like this scene because it had a lot of pattern to it. Had a lot of interesting layout of tree line, and it was open fields, and so it was, to me, it reminded me of a farmland where you'd have some vegetables growing. Okay, yeah, I was painting it off to the side. I'm sorry, I was putting in this extra field here, and I had to turn the painting just a little bit, get the angle. Okay. So by putting that gives a little character to the scene. Then over here, I got one more little area that's in the. So I'm going to lighten it up just a little bit. I'm going to take this green, add a little bit of yellow to it, and I'm going to. This is going to be let's say I'm going to make it an apple orchard over here, an apple orchard. So these are just trees that are lined up. And I'm putting them green now so they can show up, because they, at this point in time, in the late fall, good. Apples are still out there. Apples in the fall. They still got apples on the trees, but maybe the leaves are almost gone. But I'm going to just pretend that this is the early part of the fall, before the leaves have actually fallen off of the trees. And this gives you another little indication of depth, with some trees moving into the background. Okay. Now over here on this side, in order to as far as a training, as far as a teaching aid, on this side here, I don't want your eyes to go out the window, out the side of the, so I'm going to put in some structure here. These are just old weeds growing up, but it builds a block so that your eyes aren't let out of the painting. That's just a little example. I could put a tree there or something, or a bigger tree, but just the idea that you'd put something on the edges of the painting, to keep the viewer looking in toward the painting. And these are pointing toward the impact area. Then over here, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to build a tree out here. Some branches on it. And just a hint that there's something here growing. Doesn't have to be a lot of detail. And let's see. The house. I'm going to put a little more detail on the house, because that's the point of interest. I'm going to put a little red chimney up here on the top. It's the only red in the painting there. And then a light gray roof here. Don't want to leave it white, make it a gray. And the sun's coming this way, so this side, it'll be a white building, but on the shadow side, I'll put a little bit of blue to show a shadow. Just a little bit of blue on the white to show it's not out of sunlight. It's not in the sunlight. Okay, and then to finish it off, I'll put a little bit of shadow pattern on the ground. I'm adding a little bit of shadow pattern to the base of the house. And I'm going to put some fence posts here just to give it, again, this is just I'm decorating the impact area just to give it a little more interest. And I'll take some of this, make an indication, maybe a window. Maybe another window here. There's a doorway here. Okay. And a little bit of burnt sienna. This would be a little roadway up the hill past the fields. I'll start out with a darker color. Pick up a little yellow ochre. And finish off with a little lighter color going into the back, behind the trees over here. Okay. And the last thing I'm going to do is basically take a bigger brush. And I'm going to take some of this green. I'm just going to go in here. I'm just going to lightly go in and do a little bit of impressionism of these are trees. Just put some shapes in there. Just show maybe some of the leaves are a little bit in sunlight, some are in shadow. This needs to be gone. This needs to be going down here. These are just little indications that there's greenery out there. Just a hint, an impressionism of something growing out there. I think what I'll do here is in this section, I'm going to put this section here. I'm going to put a little bit of yellow in here, just a little bit of yellow. Sun's shining this way, so it'll pick up some of the higher branches, some of the higher areas that are up near the closer to the sun. Pick up some of that color in here. It'll also break up the green a little bit by putting a little hint of maybe a little sunlight hitting those bushes and the trees. Okay, this little house down here, just one more. Get a small brush. Go from this one. Yeah, leave a lot of white areas in the spaces that it gives a little sparkle. Don't have to cover them all in. I could later on. I think the last thing I'm going to do is I've got a little bike rider up here. I'm going to really he's not going to be much of a much detail. I'm just going to kind of hint that he's there. So I'm just going to put certain marks in here, just indicating that there's something here, and let the viewer imagine. I'm going to put a little line here showing maybe a circle, the tire. This is just more of an indication. And I'm going to put him basically. He's going to be in shadow, not shadow, but he's going to just be not too well defined, just enough to indicate there's something a figure there. Bike rider's view. This is what the name of the painting is. So here's the bike rider, but he's not really the main. He's not really the main attraction here. The main attraction is going to be that little building off there in the valley. So that's the whole story. I'm just really when a painting can be a story, and this is what this is. It's kind of like telling a story of a view from a bike rider's viewpoint, riding up on the Blue Ridge Mountains. And this is a very common scene up there in the mountains. You see a lot of this. And I think I think I'll give him a little color on his face. I'll put just a hint. Give him some dark hair. And he's got a helmet on. Okay. I could add other touches to this, but it's not necessary at this point. I think just to show that this was a painting that could be done from a photograph, and then to show the different parts of. I did a wet on wet sky. I had to let that dry a little bit before I put in the long range mountains back there, way in the background. Then I put different layers of greens, the darker green, a middle sized green, and a darker green here in the foreground because it's brighter much easier to see the greenery here, so it's a little bit darker. And then the pattern of the fields there in the back in the middle ground, along with a little house there is an impact area. And then the big roadway coming here with the fence line, and a little bike rider there looking out over the valley. Oh, I'm gonna let that go. I could touch it up some more. If I do any more with it, I will go ahead and attach it to the video later if I do any more to the painting. But right now, I'm gonna just stop it right there, and I'm gonna come back to the main camera. Okay, that wraps up my the painting session here today. A little class on prominent color scheme, cool colors with a little warm color around the impact area. That's really the tip. That's really the lesson to take away today. How you draw those trees in, and how many trees you put in, and how you do it. That could be variable. You want to vary the different colors of greens, especially with all the greenery that's out there in the landscape. So I try to vary the greens in 4 or 5 different colors of green to make up that painting. And I think the background where the sky meets the mountain is also another important thing. Wet on wet is also something you have to wait for it to happen. Okay, well, I enjoyed doing this painting, and I hope you got some things out of it. Please leave some comments or questions about what you've seen and some things you'd like to see down the road. Next week is Thanksgiving, so we're going to take a Thanksgiving break. I won't be here on next Thursday, and I hope you all have a nice holiday and stay safe. I'll be back on the following Thursday, December 2 at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So subscribe to my YouTube channel. Give me a thumbs up. Give me some comments. Also follow me on my Facebook page. So I appreciate all those things that help with my ratings. So I'd say sign off for now, and I'll see you on the next video.